calling this live Fun with Polarities, because we're going to make polarity fun. And this is a big topic, and I'm just trying to work out what I will talk about here, because I have a tendency, once I dip my toe into this, to like fall deeply into the waters. So I'm going to try and put a little here. And I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to let you know that I have a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Blythe Starlight, I have a Patreon there. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest of this polarity teaching in that Patreon account, and I'm going to make it available at the Moonchild level, which is the lowest level, the lowest financial commitment, so that people can hear this. So I want to start it here because it's a big topic. So first of all, let me just identify what I mean by polarity. So obviously polarities are polar opposites. And in this case, I am talking about spiritual energy. So I'm talking about, the extremes of our energy, going from a positive polarity, the most positive you can get, all the way to the most negative. And we're going to talk about these two groups as like the extremes. Now, of course, it's a spectrum, and people's energy can fall all along the spectrum of polarity. But we're going to look at the two poles. So we've got two groups of energy. So I wrote this down. Wrote me some handy notes last year, and I want to share these with you. So the polarity has to do with how your energy is charged. So you can think about this kind of like how a battery is charged. And then we've got these two extremes of energy. So we have a positive polarity and the negative polarity. Let's see. So the mode of operation in these two extremes, on the positive polarity side, the mode of operation is through love. And on the extreme negative side, the mode of operation is through fear. So love and fear being the two extremes. Now, of course, on the spectrum, you kind of get a mix, right? So if you're hanging out in the middle, or energy is in the middle, it's a mixture between love and fear. And you could really call that third density. And that is, again, where we've left. That is where all that polarized energy is mixed together. And here we are in fourth density, moving up to 5. Okay, so a lot of times when you seek this information, you hear 3D to 5D, right? And we don't really talk about fourth. Why don't we talk about fourth? Well, it's kind of like because we're in it. We're in fourth density. And each density has many, many, many layers. And I believe a density can be somewhere around a 75,000 year cycle. So we're sort of freshly in fourth density, and we're going to be here for a while. I'm just listening because it sounds like my 5-year-old's using the toilet, and I'm the only parent home. And this could be a bad thing. So we're just going to play this one by ear. I'm sweating bullets over here. Okay, we've got love on the positive side, fear on the negative side, mixed in the middle, love, fear combination. So acting out of love and fear. And in 3D, this is what life was kind of like. It was all blended together. In fourth density, where we're at now, we've got the separating or the detoxing happening, which means that we've got a clear identity of what is fear-based thinking, fear-based behavior, and what is love-based thinking, love-based behavior. And then when we get up to fifth density, which is where everyone's focusing at, this is where the two realities no longer coexist. That's why when you hear people talking about moving to 5D, the reason why they talk about moving to 5D is because we no longer coexist with those who are on a polar opposite path from us. So here's how fourth density works, where we're at now and what we're moving through. Fourth density, you've got this detox where it's like the players, the bag of negatives and positives, they're all mixed together in 3D. And then in 4D, it's like someone's sifting, right? They're sifting. You can feel this, the earth's doing it, and you feel it separating. But here, wait, we're still here together. We're still hanging out, and we have impact on each other right here in fourth density. And we see the players, right? We're like, wow, I can see how you're operating. I can see what you're operating with and through, right? There's no more fooling people anymore. So we see each other. We see each other and we see the players and how people are operating. But we have to coexist together, and we do this for a while until there's towards the end of fourth density, we really start to break into certain groups, right? We break into a pathway, and then we no longer co-experience reality together. So in fourth density beginnings, we co-experience reality together. And in fourth density down the line, there's a fork in the road. One polarity goes one way and one goes the other. So I want to actually show you this with a really scientific diagram about the human body. Are you ready to see? This might blow your mind. This might blow your mind. So let me show this to you. Super scientific. Okay. All right. I'm going to explain this in a second, but this is going to show you how the two different groups are operating, what's different, and why would we go down different paths. You guys, this is the hardest thing to do right now, is having a 5-year-old on the loose in the bathroom with the door closed, talking to somebody. And I think it's the cat, and there's water involved, so just stay right here. I just have to check. Okay, just to give you an update about what's happening. So I'm currently the only parent at home right now. My husband's still at work. My 5-year-old was using the bathroom and doing his business. And we have a bidet attachment to our toilet. We have the Tushy bidet attachment on the toilet, and this is fairly new. And for those who don't know what that is, so the bidet attachment, right, it shoots water on your bottom to clean it. And my daughter, who's 9 years old, is in the bathroom with him. And my son, who's 5, does not like that bidet, does not like it because it's so powerful. It shot him off the toilet the first time. So, naturally, my son's afraid of using the bidet because he got rocketed off the toilet the first time. So they're in there arguing right now while I'm doing my Facebook Live about, she's like, just trust me, it's so good. And I'm like, nope, we're calling this off. We will not be using this bidet. Not now. Let's get back to what we were talking about, shall we? I'm telling you, energy, there are negative entities who are like, do not reveal the secret. Positive and negative polarities. And my super scientific diagram of why it is in fourth density, in middle to late fourth density, we no longer coexist together. Those who have chosen a positive polarity and those who have chosen a negative polarity. Why don't we coexist together? And it really has to do with what happens to us in energy. Okay, so what happens to us energetically? When we polarize, so when we move closer to one extreme or the other, not hanging out in the middle, to polarize, we have to choose which direction we're going to head our energy in. So how you choose is by how you focus the energy you have. Okay, so those who decide that they're going to focus their energy on being of service to the world. They want to help other people. They want to make the world a better place. They want to learn to love and understand and forgive, all of that great stuff. They start polarizing. They start moving towards the positive extreme in energy. All right, so this is the service to others, positive polarity that happens. And that does something to your body, okay? To your energy centers, rather. Then those who choose the negative polarity, they start to polarize or move their energy inward, where they're directing it all, a dominant amount of it at themselves, right? This is where they start taking advantage of others. They see opportunities that others don't see. They use other people to get what they want, right? That's service to self polarity. That's the negative pathway. And that also does something to you energetically, okay? Now, before you think you have to go be some kind of extreme example of goodness or wickedness or you know, but before you think that it's going to be hard to choose, let me actually share with you what happens when we polarize as a choice. So according to the spiritual teachings of the law of one, to move on to the positive polarity, to experience everything that the positive polarity and the positive timeline will give to you, all you have to do is commit 51% of your life's force's energy to service to others, meaning that half of your life or half of your day, if you want to look at it that way, could be spent selfishly, but as long as 1% more is spent towards others, you are positively polarized. So the interesting thing is that, you know, energy is neutral. The energy of the universe is neutral, like, because it contains all of it. But isn't it interesting that it's so much easier to go positive, to just put that, it literally says 1% more effort towards others positively polarizes you. So think about that. It only takes 1% more of effort to positively polarize, where I think of others. Cool, right? The negative polarity, though. Now this one's interesting, because to properly polarize negative, to actually get to experience the negative path from a choice point, meaning I'm going to do this, you have to commit to 95% energy of negative. It means 95% of your life is directed at you and what is good for you and what you can do for yourself, right? So you can see that the negative path, to polarize that way, requires extreme commitment, because it's considered a perverted path, meaning that it's not natural. If you look at nature is mostly symbiotic, right? Like everything wants to work together, to work with each other, right? So we breathe out carbon monoxide, and the trees drink that in. That's their energy, and they release oxygen, and we breathe that in. So symbiotic relationships are actually more natural. Whereas to be completely self-sustaining and separated is a perversion of that. It's twisted, right? And so it takes a lot more effort to achieve that. So the interesting thing is that, so if you don't go 95% negative, but you don't go 51% positive, where do you go? Where are you? Well, you're hanging out in an like undefined zone. And that means that instead of you getting to like choose the path because you're putting conscious energy towards it, what happens is you sort of end up being pulled onto the majority's path. Polarized positive, which means I'm consciously focusing energy this way, 51%. So 1% more effort. To consciously move to the negative path, 95% effort, real focus needs to happen there to make it onto that path line of choice. And then when we're not doing that, when we're kind of hanging out in this gray area, we get pulled into the majority's choice. And this is something that if you listen to teachers and authors like Dolores Cannon, if you listen to Law of One, if you listen to, I mean, I think it's even in the Bible they talk about it too, but they're talking about the fact that this is happening. This happens over and over again, that humanity never quite catches on to the fact that we have to make a choice. And so we keep repeating this vibration. And finally, we've gone through it in a couple cycles where they've actually done an earth reset. And this is where you hear stories like Atlantis and Lemuria. These were earth reset times. Any like huge natural disaster was technically considered this reset of this species. So they're like, okay, so that experiment didn't work. Let's see what we can do to bring in new awareness. Maybe we won't intervene as much, or maybe we intervene at a certain point. So that this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like the universal forces, talking about how do we make how do we get people to awaken and make a choice? So I've talked about this before, and I talk about it on my podcast, Modern Mystic Soul. I call it 2020 in the Galactic Storyline. And this is where, benevolent energies who witness, all energies are witnessing what's happening here. It's a very exciting place, and it's a unique place. Earth is a unique experiment because we are the only third density planet. We're designated the third density planet. And it's very, so there's a lot of interest. And if you've seen that meme where like aliens are sitting there drinking wine and they're like, what are you watching? And they're like, Earth 2020, this shit's crazy. Like that. They really are kind of like that. I don't know if they're having wine, but they're watching this because it is a very unique point in time and space. And what's happening here is pretty incredible. But here we're at this point again. This is the energy, the time period of choice point again, where we're on the verge of either creating this beautiful change or a beautiful catastrophe. And so those who are listening, those who hear this and are like, oh, okay, yes, I am interested and I want to hear it. The reason why is because you're actually a part of this. You're very much a part of it. And even if you can't remember these details as much, you feel it on some level. This is resonating. I might personally not have all the details correct. Oh, but there's my team. But they're saying good enough, keep going. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, tell me more, you are a part of that team who came in to help us shift. Okay, you're part of Team Shift. And what we did is we pre-decided before we got here. We had a big plan. We had a huge galactic conference, if you will, and we all volunteered to come here to help remember the plan, to wake up within the dream and make the choices, make the choice on the individual level, so that even those who never hear this message or who it doesn't resonate with, or they think it's crazy, they will benefit from those who wake up and choose. Because remember, the majority that shifts in one direction, the rest go. Okay, so the majority of those who shift into a higher frequency or who shift into positive polarity, you're bringing all your brothers and sisters with you. That's why this is so important, and that's why these messages come out over and over again, and we focus in on them, and we're listening, and we're trying to understand, because the simple version is make a choice, like fully commit one way or another. And to fully commit positive takes less energy on your part than to go negative, but ultimately pick a path and go. Like just go with gusto. It's very important and exciting time. So again, this is just the start of this polarity conversation. It's a big one. I'm trying my best not to cram too much information, but I wanted to share with you my super scientific diagram, okay? And I wanted to show you why in the middle to the end of fourth density, we won't experience one or the other polarity. So here's the positively polarized person, and here's a negatively polarized person. Now, it's interesting. So our 7 major chakras line up with the 7 major densities of experience. And notice the yellow. You guys, the team is going nuts. Notice the yellow. The yellow represents third density, or the third dimension, is some people call it that, but it's a little different. But third density, and notice that negative side has all 3, positive side has all 3. So let me talk about these points. So you know them as base, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. Red chakra, we both have these open. This is the very first chakra, and this represents vital life force energy. This is how you're alive. This is why you have electricity and energy running through your body, is because this is the front door, if you will, to your energetic centers, and this is what's providing you with life force. When this goes out, you're not here anymore, not in a physical body anyway. So this represents first density, and it's elemental, and it's it's vital and basic. Everybody's going to have this one on. Okay. Now if we go to the second chakra, sacral, why both can have these lit up and will have them on. This is the first density of expression, and this is also where personal power kicks in. Now this one tends to be heavily focused on in the negative groups, because this is where the perversion of power starts. And notice this is also the right where the sexuality is. So sexuality and power can be used in a positive combination, or they can be misused in a negative combination. But in second density, again, the two polarity, the two extremes coexist together. Now here we are. This was third density, right? This is what we've left. We've already gone through it. Now this is group awareness. This is interesting because this is social consciousness, but it's also the first time we develop ego. Now ego is important. We notice that the healthy person has it lit up too. This is where we first understand what it means to be individual. And we need this lit up, and we need it on, because this is the choice point. Third density is where the choice happens. Okay? Now in second density, one of the things that happens here that's a match actually to fourth, which is, you'll see that in a second. In second density, this is before ego. So beings and energies here, this is predominantly plant animal kingdom that are still at second density consciousness, right? Beings who reside here do not see themselves as separate. They see themselves as part of an operational system. Beings from second density do graduate to third. And for example, with animals, those who become our animal companions, what you'd call a pet, right? They identify naturally as second density, meaning that their consciousness doesn't see them as a separate being. They have no name. But when you take an animal in and give it a name and start identifying it, then that being starts to develop into third density and have conscious awareness of self. So third density is very important, and that's what this planet is the experiment, and it's called the choice. So you get a chance to develop ego and have the I am aware of me, and I'm here and you're there, and I look like this and I like this and I, right? Like we get to experience this. Now, interestingly enough, in a positive ascension, what happens here is the being gets a choice to remember. So here we think we're separate and we suffer. Third density is the only density which a positive entity can suffer in, because they're seeing separation, and this is where we can feel terribly alone and terribly afraid that we won't survive, because we were never meant to be alone. We're truly not alone, but it feels that way. So we must remember from a more primitive self, from our primitive past, the feeling of working with others and how that provided us with a sense of safety and connection. When we remember that in third density, and that we're now with this choice here of I can either do this by myself or with others, when we decide I'd rather do this with others, we open to fourth density positive. The heart chakra opens, okay? So when you polarize positive, when you put more energy to service to others, the heart chakra consciousness, okay, and I'm not talking about your energy. You can have your heart open and closed energetically all the time, but your consciousness, the level at which your consciousness now operates, when you go positive, this turns on. The consciousness of opening the heart chakra and operating mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically from there happens when you choose the positive polarity. Remember, 51%. So one more percentage of energy towards other people starts to open this in your conscious awareness. Now, you're a negative. If you chose the negative path, right? Now we've got these are considered the physical plane chakras, by the way. And their frequency naturally is a lower, like whoom, whoom, whoom frequency. When you get here, you get low, high. And then above the heart is higher and higher frequencies. So when we were blended together, we couldn't see, look, imagine you couldn't see the rest of it, but you could sense that level of energy. Would you be able to tell the difference in the old paradigm when we were all blended together, those of positive intent and negative intent? No, not really, right? So you'd have to see how they use these centers to start to identify them. Well, now here we are. This is where we are. Now look at how interesting this is. This is an open heart chakra, conscious awareness, and this one's closed and blocked. So now you can see why in fourth density, the detox vibration, you suddenly can see how people are operating, becomes very clear, right? Give me a thumbs up if you're following. If you follow what this is. So this is where we're at right now, where people are they're moving their consciousness to a more open heart center. And what that requires is empathy, compassion, non-judgment, discernment, understanding, acceptance, forgiveness. That's all the lessons that are in here. So when a being chooses negative, the negative polarity, they shut all of that off. So when you hear about some things that truly negative people have done, and we will hear more, and it'll come more and more public what they've done, and you're an open-hearted, positively polarized, conscious person, we can be like, how is that even possible? How could anyone do that to another being? How could they do that in any sin of consciousness? Well, they don't have an open heart center. Okay? So they lack the very ability. They lack the ability of empathy, acceptance, non-judgment, forgiveness, compassion. All of that is blocked. So they truly don't feel it. And it's sad. I mean, I feel, when I look at that, I feel sorrow for them. Now they don't feel sorry. They're blocked it off. And you know what it does is it prevents them from experiencing it karmically, what they're doing. So a person who's naturally positively polarized or more open, when they do something that they know is wrong, they feel it immediately, right? You're like, oh, I made a bad choice, or I feel guilt, or I feel shame, right? That activates and it causes you to go through the personal growth cycle of like, how am I going to heal this? What do I need to do? Positive. So just because we're positively polarized doesn't mean we can't make shitty choices. We can make shitty choices, but we feel the consequences pretty quickly. And then we spend a lot of time trying to heal and rectify that. It can take us years sometimes, depending on how hurt we feel for making a bad choice, right? But this negative being doesn't feel any of that. They don't feel it. They don't feel it. So, and this is where the two paths will split. And now you hear spiritual people talking about fifth density, raising your consciousness to 5D. You'll hear that a lot. So 5D right here, that's your throat chakra, conscious vibration point. Now, of course, your throat chakra can be energetically open. Absolutely. We're talking about the level at which your consciousness will vibrate. Why are people focusing on 5D? Because when we get to 5D, the road between these two beings, this is hard to try and draw without looking at the thing. It clearly forks. All right? And we no longer experience these beings in this world. So that's why people are asking us to focus on 5D. Now, 5D also represents the transparency, truth, and wisdom. Now, it's the wisdom, truth vibration, which means that everything that can be seen or known will be seen or known. And the reason why they're asking people to concentrate their focus, their frequency up here, is so that this split happens faster between these two worlds. So what does it look like? Fourth density. And fit, because these beings will experience a negative fourth density and a negative fifth density, and then they can experience part of sixth density in a negative, but then they have to bounce back to complete this, and I'll explain that really quick. So on this path, the worlds will split, and they call it a two-world split. You may have heard that term already. And this is where time starts to go. I mean, this would be the ascension paradise timeline. This is when you hear me talking about and teaching about all the time. On this path, life gets better and better. We learn the lessons of love, compassion, forgiveness, understanding, non-judgment, empathy. And we unify and work together. And the more and more we work together, the higher we raise our frequency and the more we get to experience. So that when we get to wisdom, it's a very positively balanced experience. When we get to wisdom, we get to experience it through the lens of love. Wisdom balances love. And so all new knowledge will be experienced with the lens of compassion and understanding, forgiveness, all of that, right? So this gets to be experienced in a very positive way. And then we keep traveling up, and here's unity consciousness. This is unity between love and light, because you can live in too much love and refuse to see wisdom, and you can live with absolute wisdom and no love. But when you get up to sixth density, this gets balanced completely, and then all beings merge back together. And then this is right here is the portal back to source, pure source energy again, unified consciousness. I know that's a lot. It's a lot to share. But what I want to show you is that we're here, right here in the timeline right now. And the message I keep getting from the team is to continue focusing on the timeline you wish to see, which means continue giving energy in the direction you wish to experience. So if you want to experience a positive timeline and positive energy, more of our focus goes towards not just looking at what's wrong, but trying to understand, have compassion, forgiveness, right? And a non-judgment. Those are the lessons of the heart. And when we do that, we raise up our frequency and experience the positive timeline. And again, the more of us who consciously choose to do it, no matter how painful it seems right now, we get to tip the scale into positive energy. And it takes everybody who has chosen positive gets to go, and those who didn't choose get that grace or get cradled in with the majority choice. All right. And then those who choose negative get to be on the negative timeline and experience it. But again, remember, negativity to commit or be on that timeline consciously is a 95% effort. So what we're really looking at here is those who choose, those who are consciously choosing, how many consciously choose, and depending on which scale is heaviest is the predominant timeline. Now, what I've seen is it's done. It's dominantly positive, but we won't necessarily get to experience that effect without really putting that effort in. It's kind of like, again, and the negative polarity knows this. They already know it's going to tip positive. That's the spoiler. We win in the end. That's not their goal, not to try and win or get everybody on negative side. Remember, it's really hard. Their goal is to try and prevent it from manifesting for as long as possible. That's it. So imagine we're reading a book, right? And the last chapter is, hooray, we win. They're trying to keep everybody on, chapter, let's say it's a 20 chapter book. They're trying to keep people on chapter 16 for as long as they can. Okay. So the more of us that consciously choose, the more of us tip the scale and the book starts to wrap up faster, if you will. So the actions, just take it all in. That's right. So the last thing I'll talk about are how you can tell who's choosing which polarity. Okay. Who's choosing which polarity. Now, again, some people are consciously choosing it. Some people are not. They're just kind of hanging out in Grayville, kind of closer to negative, but again, not aware that they're doing anything. So please don't, when I tell you these actions, don't go, oh, you're doing that, that means you're bad. No. It just means that that's where their energy is tipping right now. And I can show you what we can do to balance it, okay? Because this is not about blaming or this is about how we can tell what our energy is doing and what someone else is in any given moment, which way it's going. Okay, so the action, when you're positively polarizing, the dominant action is to accept. I accept this, right? So, for example, you want to go for a run outside or go for a walk. You open the door and it starts raining. And you're like, okay, I accept it's raining. I can't, and then you make a new choice. I'm going to stay inside. I'm going to go for a walk anyway. But you accept what you see. You accept what is, right? Now, acceptance doesn't mean allowing. It doesn't mean that if someone was hurting you, just because you accept that doesn't mean you're going to sit there and take it. It's not that kind of passive energy. It just means you're not blocking or denying what is, what I see. I see pain. I see anger. I see fear. I see frustration. Whatever it is you're seeing, you're accepting it. That's the dominant action of a positively polarized energy. The dominant action of a negative energy is to control. So, and look, we all experience this, right? Like at any given time, we can experience acceptance or control. So again, it's not necessarily if you're controlling or trying to control or want to control something, you're a bad person. And if you're accepting, you're a great person. No, it just simply shows you where the meter of energy is heading in any particular moment. So, for example, a negatively polarized person has to have an immaculate sense of self-control. Immaculate. They not only do they want and need and have to control others, they want and need and have to be in control of themselves. Immaculately. So even though you can't reach perfect in reality, a negatively oriented being, one with conscious intent to be negative, is trying to be as close to perfect as possible. I mean, a sick but accurate movie of this is American Psycho. If you think about how rigid and controlling that guy was, that's very accurate to that type of energy. Now, if you experience the desire to control in you, doesn't mean you're negatively polarizing. It shows that on the scale between positive and negative, it's moving towards negative. So here's what you can do, is you can move into acceptance about the situation at hand to start to move your energy back up the scale, move back up in frequency. There's more to do there, right? There's so many great models of moving your energy up the scale using emotions as a guide. But the simplest way is to recognize that, for example, my son wants to play Legos, but his way of playing Legos is to dump all of them out everywhere and just scatter them across the room. That really kicks up my need to control my environment, to have a clean and sane space, right? So I can let that energy take me over and get really constrictive and no, this is my space that needs to be clean, or I can move into acceptance that for this time being, it's going to be total chaos while he plays, and I can accept that and know that it will rebalance itself when he's done, right? So again, we just want to know which way our energy is moving, and we can look at that by how accepting or how controlling our energy is being in the moment, okay? If you want to hear more about it, like I said, for the month of June, I'm going to be teaching about the topic of polarity in my Patreon. You can join at the lowest level and get all the little classes that I will be doing. They're exclusively on Patreon, and I will be able to break it down more topic by topic that way. And I want to be able to share it with people, but it's going to take a time investment on my part. So I'm going to put it on Patreon. If you want to go deeper, check that out. I will put a link in the comments. And also there's other goodies there too. But here's how we do karma cards. If this is your first time, let me explain. I have 3 decks here. I have the planets, signs of the zodiac, and houses of astrology. And I've already called in my team. I've asked them, what is the message coming up? And they've given me an answer. I get 2 answers here. I get action-related answers in red and outcomes in blue. And the way that you play is you simply decide whether it's an action you want right now. You can type in red for action. Or if you want an outcome, you can type in blue. And of course, if you want both, type in purple or both, whatever floats your boat there. This particular message activates on the new moon on May 22nd. And it goes the 22nd through the 25th, they said. This is the message for May 22nd through the 25th. Let me tell you the flavor of this current reading. So we have the planet Mercury in the sign of Aquarius, the visionary, the future thinker, in the 6th house of service to others and health. And I think it's really interesting that that house was designed that way. It's about health and service to others, being of service. Awesome. So this is interesting. So Mercury, ruler of the mind, the messenger and the expressive, communicative one in the Aquarius, sign of the visionary, the future, service to others, service to others. There's a house, you know, isn't it interesting? We have a house called self, but it's not called service to self. It's about awareness of the self. There's my team. And then we have a house called, but we do have a house called service to others. So I really think it's interesting that just, and remember, astrology is an ancient art and it was given to us. So there's a hint there, right? There's a hint that they've been trying to like pass on over and over again. They have to be subtle, but they're always like service to others, you know, like love is the answer kind of thing. I swear to God. For those who are choosing action or both, your spiritual action at this time, communicate your vision as a full-time job. This really does line up with the last message, which is you are the team leader and you need to choose. You are the team leader and you need to choose. So communicate your vision as a full-time job. This makes sense. This actually happened during a reading I did earlier today where we sat down and we started talking details about the future timeline we want to see. And this is something I do with groups of friends of mine. We sit down and we talk about the future together all the time. And not the future we're afraid of, because that's not the energy we want to create. We talk about the future we want to see. And we see how far we can take that vision and how detailed we can get it. So communicate your vision of the future is really what that means as a full-time job. You know, the trick that's kind of happening is when fear is so activated, we tend to talk about the future all the time. We talk about, we as a species talk about the future all the time. The problem is with such a heavy, fearful influence on us. And again, that's past paradigm, but it was a fear-based paradigm. The future is always about what we don't want to see and what we're afraid of. And guess what we help manifest when we do that? The thing we don't want. So again, the message is to communicate your vision of the future as a full-time job. Man, they've really been hitting that home. This comes up a lot right now, the full-time job thing. Your mental action at this time. Analyze what is new and different about serving. So they want you to think about the new information that you got about serving, being of service. And maybe some of it came up today when I was showing you the actions required, right? And the effort required. It's not a lot, but it is a conscious choice. So again, analyze, think about what is new and different about serving, new and different information. Contemplate this point. Physical action at this time. Let your mind tell you how to use an unconventional way and do it a little at a time. So again, they're saying, you know, this communicate your vision, do it unconventionally. They are really emphasizing tonight that it isn't a lot, that it's really not a lot that's being required of us. This actually came up in the last spirit circle, the full moon spirit circle, that someone was worried that they weren't doing enough work because they weren't taking hours to meditate, right? They weren't like concentrating heavily on it. They were giving like a little bit at a time. And the message that came through from that is you don't need to do hours anymore. They said time is speeding up. Things are moving faster and faster all the time, and you know this. So the amount of energy given isn't, the length of time isn't as important as the consistency, consistently giving it a little energy. All right, so hear that, because time is moving differently. And, you know, you may have had several past lives where you were, you know, professional at meditating, like a monk or a nun or something like that. And you could spend hours and hours in prayer. And, you know, long ago when the frequency was moving slower and the earth's heartbeat was like, you know, we had to do hours and hours. So there's a part of you on a cellular level that goes, this is right. I mean, taking a lot of time feels right. Yes, it feels right because that's what it used to take. But what you've got to understand is that look at the Schumann resonance. Look at the heartbeat of the earth. Look how fast it's going. Look at how much incoming solar energy is coming in. Time is moving faster. It is not about spending hours anymore. It's about consistently going back and offering it again. So that little bit at a time, that 1% more, significant change, right? So it's different. It's hard to get used to because it feels off or wrong. Like there's a part of you that's like, this doesn't feel like I'm doing it, but you are. And consistency is the key, okay? For those choosing outcome or both, for Mercury in Aquarius in the 6th house, your spiritual outcome will be the awareness of genius to experiment with service to others. The awareness of genius to experiment with service to others. So what they're saying is there's a lot of room to play here too. They're saying like, you know, there's a lot of guilt that's locking people in place. Like I have to do it this way or I'm not doing it right. And they're saying this, you know, in the Aquarian age, we throw out the idea of the right way to do it. We throw it out in the name of complete experimentation through being guided by the heart and passion. What feels good right now is technically the right way to do it. Which way does it feel good to be of service? Does it feel good to be of service by, you know, calling up a friend and listening to them talk and holding space for them? Or does it feel like you're being of service when you are dancing with abandon, right? Or does it feel like you're being of service when you take time to snuggle with your animal friend? I mean, open it up. There is a lot more real estate that you can play in. There's a lot more that you can do that's going to make a big difference and a positive impact. So that aha moment, let it in, let go, like unconfine the boundaries of spiritual work and let them flow. Mental outcome at this time, many thoughts about or from the discoveries of what is good for us. Kind of what I was just saying, right? So that's kind of like goes together. Many thoughts about or from the discoveries of what is good for us. And again, this is really about getting to, you know, get in your heart, let your heart guide you. All the answers are in your heart. I mean, I've been saying this over and over now to a point where I'm like, I get it. And they're like, sure you get it. Sure you get it. Get in here. So as long as we're going, no, I get it. You know, the heart has the answers. If you're doing this while you're thinking about it, you're still up in here. So they are like, right, we're going to keep repeating this until you are maybe sick and tired of hearing it, but also hanging out in your heart. And when you're truly in there, when you're truly operating from that place and letting that guide you, the message changes, right? So that's what they're saying. Physical outcome at this time, many words resulting from the eccentricity of your work. Okay, so there's some of you who probably are already getting this point where you're putting things out there, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your authentic self out there, and you're getting stuff, you're getting feedback, positive and negative. That's going to happen no matter what we do, no matter how correct or safe we think we're being. Yeah. We're always going to get feedback, right? So, and the eccentricity just is talking about the more you let your freak flag fly, the more you let your authentic weird self out, the more that's going to get noticed, right? Because what it does is it either acts like a beacon and flags over your friends who are very much like you, or it acts like a what I was going to say, I don't know, like a thorn, or just it sticks out. It's like sticks out, right? So it's that thing that either has to be appreciated or clipped out. And there's always going to be a response, no matter how much you try to hide it. And it's not a time of hiding anymore. No one gets to hide anymore. So the more that we try to suppress or subdue ourselves, we are still sticking out and we're still going to be seen for who we are. So they're saying, let yourself fully out. This doesn't mean you, and again, it's not like a confrontational letting yourself out. It's just let yourself be free. And more information, more ahas flow to you easily from that place, and more joy. You're just open. You're so open to it. And things move faster when we, unblock the dam, right? So part of the mask and the hiding is a heart wall of protection. And we all have heart walls, and some of us have thicker ones than others. Some of us have been actively working at breaking those down. But anytime that we feel we're not safe to express ourselves, or we're not safe to be who we are without being fear of being judged or disliked for it, there's a wall around our heart. And that the real message here is to, little by little, take the wall down. Until I see you next time, have an amazing new moon. Lots of beautiful things are coming. And I want you to know that I see you and appreciate you. Love you. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so that you know the next time I release a new video. Until then, stay magical.